Welcome back to The Evil Within. This is our You Asked For It achievement run. So it's a new game on Akumu difficulty. First thing I want to point out is look at all the crosses on the wall. We're seeing those everywhere. I don't really have a firm explanation for it.
Ruben. Does he mean Ruvik?
Numbers are irrelevant. They received as they themselves gave, and they served a higher purpose. They furthered my research.
This was not mere research. The things the papers say were done to those people, those traps.
These vermin, these microbes, they're mine to do with as I please. But you are correct. This was not mere research. I'm close to perfection.
This is abhorrent.
This is my will.
I want to point out there's kind of three physical appearances of Ruben / Ruvik throughout the game. There's the young boy before the fire. Then there's the young man there wrapped kind of with bandages, but without a cloak and hood. And then there's the cloaked and hood figured version of him.
Mansion basement note. My children have been taken from me. Was it fate? Was it something he did? Surely not my perfect son. It was that fire. It ruined everything, took everything. The children are not the same, and neither is Ernesto. He said he was taking care of them, that they were safe, but now he says they're gone. How could that be? A mother would know such a thing. I still hear my darling boy's voice, his laughter, and always from the basement. It cannot be. A mother needs her children.
Okay, and two things I want to point out about that, while it's still fresh in your mind, was that the mother said, was it something he did? So even the mother, who apparently, darling boy, loving boy, everything, she was very positive about Ruben, but even she had a question in the back of her mind, was it something he did? So even she knew that he was a little bit off. That's the sociopath, the little monster at the beginning of his life. From day one, he was a sociopath and dissecting animals. Not a good thing. So even she knew there was something a little off about him. The second thing I want to point out, there was the fixed camera again from the Resident Evil.
Do you have any idea why this world is the way it is?
What? Who are you?
Hate. Hate. Ruvik's hate. The man's consumed by it. He wants out. Wants to get his revenge. He wants back what he feels the world took from him. It's not like he could actually get that. It's not like he could actually get that. This world exists as long as he does.
You heard something just now?
Okay, so the lower bits are coming hard and fast here. They only come kind of at the beginning of the game. There are the crosses on the wall again. You can see that kind of the wallpaper is beginning to peel. There's now sunflowers on the wall. So things are beginning to change. There's sunflowers on tables.
Car accident, 2 dead. Wealthy landowner and wife die in car crash. Nightmare for family. Bodies of Ernesto and Beatrice Victoriano found in wreck. Son inherits family fortune.
Okay, so I think that hits most of the lore bits. So let's discuss them. Okay, we'll start in order. From the ghostly appearance where Dr. Jimenez and Ruben were talking, I mentioned that there's 3 kind of manifestations of Ruben inside the game. There's the little boy where we saw, really the only time we've seen that is in the ghostly memory recalls inside the mansion where Dr. Jimenez was talking to a very young Ruben, and we saw him dissecting a pig's head, things like that. We saw him playing with his sister Laura in the barn. That was the original Ruben. That was the little monster, the little sociopath. Dissecting pigs, presumably still alive and conscious, kind of the way he winds up doing later. Then there's the young man who, after the burning in the barn, was confined to the basement You heard his mother's note talking about her still hearing his voices down in the basement. When he was standing over his mother and father for having killed him, for having locked him in the basement. So there's that manifestation that's kind of this early manifestation of Ruben himself, where he starts, first he takes patricide, he kills his parents, then he moves on to torturing and the people of Elk River, the village where the villagers that burned the barn lived, right outside his mansion and his estate. Quick note on what I'm doing here in the upgrades. I'm going to start focusing on handgun critical because I've maxed out the accuracy, but I also know that chapter 10 is it's a marathon of misery. You don't get to come back. For a long time, you're not going to be able to come back to the sanctuary. And because of that, I know I'm going to be depleted on ammo. So I'm going to at least make it to where I can carry a little bit more so that I don't have to leave anything behind, because you're going to need every ounce of it. Okay, so upgrades out of the way. We'll go back with the third manifestation of Ruben. Okay, so in the second manifestation of Ruben, the man with the bandage, the young man with the bandages wrapped around his head and kind of more normal clothing, that's the man that tortured and killed a lot of people in Elk River. What you heard them talking about was the newspaper article that we read, where 4 bodies were found near the Victoriano estate with what seemed like some sort of crude surgical procedures performed on them. That's that person. Then after he determines that he can overwrite the mental, obliterate the consciousness, human's consciousness, and replace it with himself, that then is when he starts wearing the hood and the garb. And that's when he starts working at Mobius, or at least with Mobius, sometimes in the labs at Mobius. That's kind of the more grown up, more slightly older, but with a more maniacal goal in mind. Okay, the second thing that we noted was the note from the mother. The mother said that Ernesto, her husband, was going to take care of them, but now she hears the voice of her darling boy down in the basement. We know that Ruben was locked down in the basement, but notice that she doesn't talk about the daughter. She doesn't say, like, I still hear voices of the daughter. I think that what probably happened was that the parents, the father specifically, may have euthanized his daughter, realizing what terror and horror she was in a coma. Now, whether or not Ruben was able to subconsciously connect her subconscious before that happened, or whether the trauma of connecting to her as she was in her coma and finding only the screeching, multi-limbed Laura at the bottom of that, still living in that husk of a body, whether that led to Laura dying, or whether the father just neglected her or just euthanized her because of she was never going to get up from the coma. One thing I want to point out here, I do this with the light just specifically to show you, those wires disappear. You think you're seeing them, but really they completely disappear if you don't have the light on. So you need to be careful with the light. And here it's the same with the bear trap watch. It just, it's gone. I mean, it's still there, but the chances of you seeing it without the light on is about 0. So anyway, just wanted to point that out. Kind of a game mechanic thing. So I think there's evidence there to say that Laura is actually dead because of the mother's note. She's still hearing the boy, but she doesn't talk about Laura at all, other than they're gone, saying that they're both gone. This is kind of this area right here winds up being a very kind of tricky strategic thing, so I want to tell you what I'm doing. As I come up here, as soon as that shot happens, this guy will come running. You need to be back far enough so that he comes running around the corner, you can pick up this axe, and you can be stepping forward to get to her. If you wait for her to get to you, her flailing arms will almost inevitably kill you. So the timing of that, you got to be back far enough, but catch him as he comes around the corner, pick up his axe, and then use it on her. Anything else is pretty much you're just going to have to use shotguns or something that's going to knock something back, because those two come fast and they come hard. This winds up being harder. This area winds up being much harder in Akumu than on other difficulties that I played. Specifically, there are like 5 foes here. At least four, maybe five. The only way that I really found to repeatedly get by them was to draw them into that corner, the first two that are normally there. Use this bomb against them. Oddly, that does not kill them. You would think, at least the small little one that was close to him, that would kill him. Two more will come rushing out of there. Use a shotgun on them. You have to be really cool. And see, there's the fifth one. There's the guy with the gun. You have to be really careful of him. Now these other two have stood up. I had to reload my shotgun, so I had to retreat a bit. The fat boy there is hard to kill. He will stand up again and again. I took advantage of that guy posturing to off him. So that winds up being a much harder sequence in Akumu than it ever was on the other difficulties that I played, survival and casual. Certainly not casual, you just tank them, but the fact that there's 5 of them instead of 2, and if you try to, normally what I would do is I would wait for him to walk away, and then I would go in there and I would stealth kill at least one. But the fact that even the bomb doesn't kill them, it just shows you how hard that sequence can get. The next note that I wanted to point out was when we got back to Sanctuary, there was a man in the room next to us. Now the first time that happened, I think you heard him knocking there once in chapter 9. Now that we're in chapter 10, what I want to point out is that there's no real evidence that he was there prior to that. I mean, you can conjecture that he's been there all along. One more point about strategy. If you don't walk out there, these two guys just pedal around and you can just pick them off. I do a horrible job of shooting this guy, but it really shouldn't be as hard as I make it. It should only take one shot, but that pole is a bit of a pain in the, you know. Anyway, don't walk out there. If you walk out there, you get in a sniper battle. Of course, if you're going to spend 4 bullets to kill 2 people, you might as well have been in a sniper battle. Now I'm up to 5 bullets. Okay, fine. So you probably saw me doing that, the worst job I ever did on that. But this is the run that I get through the whole thing. So this is the run you get to see. But you get the idea. If you stand there, you could shoot them. You should be able to hit them two shots, and you would still have saved, 3 sniper rounds. So, and took no chance. They're not shooting at you, so you'd be fine. The person in the cell that's there, I believe we get from the DLC. He actually has a name. I think he's a reporter called, I forget the last name, but his first name is Salvador. And he was a reporter that was bothering Jimenez, and Jimenez basically gave him over to Ruben. As for a personal interview, last thing you want is a personal interview with the sociopath that's gone egomaniac, gonna change the world. One point I want to make out about bear traps in this area: make sure the blade just passed, because see that little step up? That's not me. That's not me letting go of it. That's the last of the animation of disarming a bear trap. And so every time you disarm a bear trap, you stick your head up where it can be taken off. So just know that and be very careful about it. There's nothing like having an almost perfect run and then, oh, look, there's a bear trap. I can get some more parts from it. And that's all you want is the parts. Notice I saved this guy's axe. And we can watch these two guys climb through here. This is one of my favorite little scenes in my playthrough. Goodbye. Usually only one of them makes it through here. I've never had both of them make it through here. And you can hit him while he's still standing down. Be careful though, don't step out there. Okay. So Salvador was a reporter that was given a private interview with Ruben. His advice is, I can't say he's not right, that the world is based on Ruvik's hate. It certainly seems to be based on his hate. At the same time, you also want to be careful of picking up gel. That little hop, it's not as big as it is with the bear traps, but you'll notice there's a little hop. So I got to where I just always make sure the blade just crossed before I do anything. I don't think, when you disarm these, I don't think you actually stand up enough to make a difference. Mostly what I'm doing there is trying to get resources, things to be able to make agony bolts from. I don't want to spend too much time on Salvador because his advice is either kind of obvious or not particularly useful. But I do want to point out that my philosophy on why he's there ties along with the next point I wanted to make about what we saw back in the sanctuary, and that's that the walls now have signs of Ruvik being there, namely the sunflowers. There's paintings on the wall with sunflowers on. Stand up like that. Okay. Sunflowers even like painted on the wall itself. That's clear evidence that sanctuary is compromised and is now at least partially accessible or completely accessible to Ruben/Ruvik. Salvador wandered in like a lost dog looking for shelter. He was apparently never completely consumed by Ruben or Ruvik. He's kind of left just wandering, and he finds a place to curl up and die. He's not there as some sort of guide or messenger. I hate that sometimes they stand up. I've actually been killed, not specifically there, but I've been killed by one that was burning that stood up. I wasn't watching. He stood up and grabbed me and killed me. I mean, because on Akumu, any touch kills, so. I don't get this grenade back there far enough. I really should have come up to this corner and thrown it farther. Then it might have hit the bomb, that's the proximity bomb that's back there, but certainly it's going to bring them coming. Essentially, I could have just used a machine dodge. That was crazy. So now we know that the sanctuary has been compromised by Ruben for sure. We see it all over the walls. You have to be really careful of that guy. He's got a gun. So now what are we doing? What is chapter 10? So if let's do a real quick check of the game summary. So we spent 3 chapters going through the first chapter in the world falls apart, right? And everything, that's when everything kind of happens. It's a quick chapter, but the world falls apart for us. Basically, we get attached into STEM and we don't know what's going on. Sebastian's at a complete loss. Then we spend 3 chapters 2, 3, and 4, going through Elk River, chasing after Leslie. Leslie introduces us to the sanctuary, shows us how to use the mirrors to get into the sanctuary. Then he spends some time with Kidman. He starts projecting Kidman's childhood memories of, instead of Elk River, but Cedar Hill, another village. And the place where we're first introduced to the church and the crosses that are now everywhere throughout the game. I mean, you'll find them on walls almost everywhere. Not specifically here at the moment, but like we saw them in the mansion, we see them all over the sanctuary. But we spent 3 chapters there. We spent chasing Kidman. So we spent Chapter 5, we're actually with her and Joseph for a while, and that's when it sparks in Sebastian a thought that maybe Kidman isn't who she says she is, and that maybe she has some information. So we spend Chapter 6 trying to get to her. We break through a firewall, through a border checkpoint in Chapter 6. We get to the church at the end of Chapter 6, and then. So I guess it's really only two episodes or 2 chapters. Chapter 5 and Chapter 6, where the Kidman puzzle is really what we're focused on. At Chapter 7, at the end of Chapter 6, we're very close to her. We're in the church cathedral, and at that point, Ruvik says he can't risk that. He redirects us towards trying to solve the mystery of who Ruvik is, who Ruvik himself is. That consumes Sebastian through all of Chapter 7, breaking through the outer shell. Chapter 8, traveling the dank and dark forgotten neural pathways to get to the core. And then chapter 8 inside the Victoriano mansion, and to where we finally see the birthplace of the true horror that we're facing, and that was the barn, the barn fire. At the end of that chapter, we ran from Amalgam, this huge beast of multi people stitched together, and we ran in panic from it, and we ran. Our subconscious ran straight back to the sanctuary. Ruvik used that as a pathway to find the sanctuary, and has breached the sanctuary. At that point, we no longer will see Leslie in the sanctuary anymore, even though it was his original construct. You'll see the outside of that sanctuary decay and crumble. It was partially evident in where we were. Unfortunately, we won't see it again in this episode, so I can't point it out again. But Ruben / Ruvik at the center of them now has access to the sanctuary, and you see that written all over the walls. So what is our goal now? Our goal after chapter 9, so we spent 7 breaking the outer walls, 8 going through the forgotten neural pathways of his mind, and then we spent 9 inside the mansion and discovering all the lore that we're going to basically get about Ruben / Ruvik. Now we're in chapter 10. We're climbing back out of his mind. So we've got to now, if you think about, we spent 7 and 8 getting into his mind. We're going to spend all of chapter 10 getting back out. That makes it a long chapter. That's a long path back out. We're going to have to face kind of manifestations of the traumas that he went through. In this episode, we're going to face 3 specific monsters that are only in this chapter, and those represent the 3 traumas that Ruben went through: the loss of Laura in the basement, or in the barn fire, then the confinement to the basement, and then being dissected and made into Ruvik. So from the lore perspective, I believe that's what this journey of chapter 10, this marathon of misery is. It's coming out of Ruvik's mind, coming back out, and facing the manifestations of what has made Ruvik such a horrible person. I mean, he started off, 2 strikes against him with being a sociopath, but it only goes south from there, right? So to me, that's what chapter 10 is, and it is meant to be long and grueling because it's a long path back out of that dark tunnel that dark cave that we climbed into that was Ruvik's mind. So we have a long path back out. That long path back out is also solitary. We don't see Joseph, we don't see Kidman, we don't even have access to Tatiana and the sanctuary. Once we left the sanctuary there and started this path, we have to get all the way through it. So I think if we view this chapter in that light, it gives it a meaning for why we're here and why it is what it is. Again, it's filled with horrors. In one way you could think of it is you face like 3 or 4 boss fights, depending on whether you call the traumas boss fights. You're gonna, throughout the chapter, we're gonna face first those 3 traumas that I talked about. We're gonna face, and the game calls them traumas. So, I mean, it's not. This is when I realized I didn't have any matches. I run up there to burn him and I can't. I've been using the matches freely. They've been flowing freely. You don't have to blow these bombs up. You can just kind of walk around them. I was a little nervous that there might still be some around, and if I wanted to run back, I wanted to be able to run without having to worry about tripping one of these things off. So I just destroy them as I go. I don't have the reflexes. My thumbs are not. My hand-eye coordination is not capable of hitting those little blue lines on any consistent basis. So there was no way I was trying to disarm them. On casual, there are always these wide blue bands, but on survival, there'll be a few of them that will be, and I don't know if they're consistently the same ones or if it's random, but there'll be a few of them that have the narrower band. But on Akumu, they're all very narrow. If you don't remember how that works, it looks like a clock. The needle starts at the top at 12 o'clock and spins around. It spins pretty fast, and you have to. Most of the dial will be red, and you have to stop it in the blue area. And on Akumu, the blue area is very narrow, so your hand-eye coordination and timing have to be spot on. I'd like to claim that it's because I'm running. When we ran this game, we could not get it to run on full screen mode, so we had to run it in a window. My Windows is running at the full 4K, and at that resolution, my TV will not refresh faster than 24 frames per second. So I'm playing at 24 frames per second, which some people would say is you can't play at that rate because there's too much lag in input to response on your gamepads. I'm also playing with a gamepad, not a keyboard and a mouse. So even though it's PC gaming, it's giving me the console feel because I'm using a gamepad. At this point, we were using a Logitech F10 wireless gamepad, so it's wireless. It is the 2.4 gigahertz, so the latency is kind of low. But I guess because I always play on the games this way, so it doesn't feel unplayable to me at 24 frames per second. But people would say that's why I can't make the little blue thing. But it's more likely that Brian's retired old man doesn't have the ability to hit those little blue bars. Hand-eye coordination is not what it was when I was 20. All right, so this room is going to be the first of the traumas. To me, I think this represents the loss of Laura in the barn fire. I start calling it the loss instead of the death because I don't believe she died in the barn fire. She died afterwards. But so my plan was I like to open it with a grenade, and then I was planning to freeze him with shock bolts. And if I run out of shock bolts, then freeze bolts. You can see it's like the best of plans. It falls apart as soon as it meets the real world. We wind up running around a lot, but we do get through it. So now that we've established what Chapter 10 is, it's climbing out of Ruvik's mind. Let's talk a little bit about what the goals of the various parties should be, or what they are versus what they should be. Ruvik, we've established, wants to get out of STEM. He may have started originally with wanting to either revive Laura from a coma by connecting to her subconscious. He either found the monster in place of her subconscious, and he's now got the only pure memory he has of Laura is the memories of Ruben, the little boy Ruben, before the fire. He's got that locked away in the back of his mind, almost as if Ruben himself, the little boy, was locked in a basement inside the backside of Ruvik's mind. He holds that, he sort of cherishes it, but every time he goes back to touch that memory, he brings the fire with him, because that was his birth. That's what he knows is the fire. So even though he's got Ruben, the little boy, pinned up in the back of his mind to try to recall Laura from the ether of that memory, every time he tries to touch that memory, he pulls out the Laura that we know, the one that the screaming, multi-armed, just tortured and torturing soul. It's just nothing pleasant about it. So that's a continued thorn in his side. The fact that she's now gone, either by him deciding he had to kill her because all that was left was the multi-armed screaming banshee, or through her father's either neglect or euthanasia. he's lost her completely. So his goal shifted from trying to save Laura to trying to torture and experience the torture of the Elk River villagers. First he killed his parents in patricide, then he wanted revenge on the entire village. There's always a guy here that, obviously I didn't get turned before I wasted a shotgun shell. Did have a match for him, so that was good, but I went too far and that guy woke up. See, so I didn't get to do what I normally like to do, is I like to be standing there with a grenade, throw the grenade as I step up and the door opens. And so that didn't work. I do have an axe, and I forgot to pick it back up. There you go, pick it up. I hit him with the axe, thinking, well, that worked really well against the sadist at the end of chapter, well, not at the end of chapter 6, but midway through chapter 6, at the border checkpoint. So I thought, well, maybe that axe will do a lot of damage. And you can see that they go through stages. They start with the crossbeam, if you will. It's goes across their back. They start with that, and it's holding their arms up. And the first stage, if you know you've done serious damage when they break that, they become more mobile at that point, and arguably more dangerous because they're more mobile. I don't know how he missed me there. By all rights, I should be dead, and you shouldn't be seeing this run. You should be seeing the next one. But it worked, so I'm not going to look that gift horse in the mouth. A point on how to use explosive bolts. Don't put them on the enemy. If you put them on the enemy is likely to run at you, and the explosion is likely to kill you and them. Place them, make sure you're far enough away, and kite your enemy to them. Okay, so we survived the first trauma. I do want to point out that there is another possible way to get by that trauma. Maybe faster, and it certainly uses less resources. It does use electric bolts, and that's when he first comes out to freeze him with an electric bolt. Use the time that he's frozen to throw the lever and escape. Not the approach I took, obviously. I don't know if... to me, it was more satisfying to kill him. I honestly did not even think about trying to run that way. It's probably a better and more repeatable exercise than trying to kill him. However, I felt it's more satisfying to kill him. Okay. All right, so we've established that Ruben is no longer really trying to save Laura, that she has died, that the only hope he has of really saving her would be to pull her from the ether of the little boy Ruben buried in the basement of his own mind. But every time he tries to touch that memory, he brings the fire of the barn with him, because that's all he knows. That was how he was born, was in the crucible of that fire. So every time he tries to touch that memory, he brings the fire with him. And Laura winds up being this twisted, screaming, multi-armed monster. This incenses him and turns all of his energies towards hate and revenge. That's what the the reporter Salvador was talking about up there, that this world is based on hate. He hates the world and he wants to get back what was taken from him, which he can't do. Just he can't get Laura back. But that hate first turns to patricide, where he kills his parents for having locked him into the basement. Then it turns towards the Elk River residents. We saw how horrifying that was to even Dr. Jimenez, who has very high tolerance for horrible things. But in that he turned his research towards linking their subconsciouses, where he could stay connected with them at a subconscious level long enough to fully experience the trauma of what he was physically doing to them. He found that the trauma that he could inflict by subconsciously being linked to them was far greater than the trauma of anything he could do to them physically. Because of that, he wanted to stay connected longer, and to inflict that, he came upon the three key elements of breaking the person down, breaking their psychic down, and that was fear, consent, and hope. That's going to become a theme for our videos going forward, but here I want to just mention kind of the timeline of how we got there. After that, that's what really intrigued Jimenez and got Mobius involved, was the ability to break down a person's psyche and to subconsciously either directly control them or to at least give so much of a subliminal messaging to them that you can control their reactions to the world and thus can control the world itself.
What is
But
this place?
first, before we can get much further up on that chain, we're going to have to face the next two traumas. We're going to leave that and the Laura and the amalgam all to the next video. So the next video is going to be high on action. We don't get to go back to the sanctuary. Like I said, this is the Marathon of Misery. Welcome to the halfway point. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.